All right, welcome to Sonoran Sky Live. I'm meteorologist Pete Mangione.
And I'm meteorologist Royal Norman. How you doing today?
Well, I'm doing pretty well, Royal. And today's topic will be on the possibility of an El Nino coming to a theater near you soon. But before we talk about that, we did want to talk about just all the ridiculous records we've been setting, and we just had the warmest March on record, right?
By a long shot, it appears. And we knew that was coming a couple of weeks ago when we ran up all those 100-degree plus days. We knew it was coming.
Yeah.
It happened. You've got the numbers to show it, don't you?
Yeah, I do. So let's show you our weather computer here, Mario. There we go. And you can see.
Wow.
Now what I did.
Oh my gosh.
Normally we show the averages.
Yeah.
And if I were to put up the averages, it would also be in first place. Just want to let you know that. But I decided to just average all the high temperatures.
Oh, so are you clickbaiting this right now?
Yeah, that's what I do.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Yeah, there you go.
That's what I do, of course. So the average high temperature, Royal, this year in March was almost 93 degrees.
That's
and a
unreal.
reminder, this is March.
Yeah, I know, that's unreal.
And look how much we beat 1972 by.
6 degrees, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, a little more than 6 degrees. And that was our next hottest March. So that tells you how, we were telling about how out of whack it was.
Yeah.
You know, the March the only other time we got to 100 was back in 1988, and it was one day. It was a one and off. We popped up, no one expected it. It popped right back down the next day. This time, we pop up to 100, and we stay there for 10 days. It was unbelievable.
Just totally crazy. I mean, all the records we were setting, the earliest 100 on record.
Yes.
The earliest 105 on record.
Yep.
If we had made it to 106, which we didn't, but if we had, we were 1 degree away, it would have actually set the all-time April record in March.
Oh, my.
So we almost broke a record for a month we weren't even in yet.
Okay, and so you're telling me March is just, well, we had a whole bunch of warm months before that, right?
Yes.
So this is we're getting a little streak going.
Yes, so, and we were talking about this before we came on here. So it was the warmest March on record, the warmest February on record, the fourth warmest January on record, the warmest December on record, and the warmest winter on record.
Well, there you go. That's 4 of a kind or something like that. Yeah, that's crazy, and we don't think that heat's going to let go. But a lot of that will have to do with what kind of monsoon we get, because as you know, we can get monsoon. When we get the hottest summer temperatures, generally speaking, the monsoon as far as rain isn't doing a whole heck of a lot. We're not getting that daily, not daily cooling, but occasional cooling from thunderstorms or even thunderstorms from outside the valley. So on, generally speaking, drier monsoons, we tend to get the hotter temperatures, but we've been combining that lately with heat and moisture, and it's a little scary at times.
It is. You get those big, powerful storms sometimes that the heat hooks up.
Let's talk El Nino, shall we?
You ready to talk El Nino,
I'm
Royal?
ready. Let's do it.
All right. I'm going to welcome both our guests. They are actually repeat guests, Royal.
Oh, wow.
On the Sonoran Sky live stream. We had them on a few minutes ago, so I'm going to bring in Emily Becker, Research Associate Professor at the University of Miami Rosenthal School, and Nat Johnson, a meteorologist with the NOAA Geophysical Fluid Dynamics Laboratory. Welcome both to Sonoran Sky Live, and welcome back.
It's good to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, so Emily, let's start with you. There is talk about an El Nino coming at some point this year.
A bombastic one.
That's right. That's right. A lot of chatter about this. Before we get into all that, can you just briefly explain what El Nino means in terms of open ocean temperatures and things like that?
Yeah, you bet. So the first thing that we look for El Nino is warmer than average waters in the central tropical Pacific Ocean. So those waters are only 1 or 2 degrees, 3 degrees maybe, warmer than average, but they cause a lot more storms and rising air in that central tropical Pacific area, and that can affect the entire world.
And just to give viewers a perspective, Emily, on what you're talking about, can we take our touchscreen computer, maybe take that in full for just a second? I just want to show the viewers what Emily was mentioning when it comes to these warmer ocean temperatures. Okay, so this is an example, I think, from 2015 of an El Nino. That ribbon, that red line, that shows ocean temperatures compared to normal. So this is kind of what an El Nino looks like. It's that region of water in the Pacific. When it gets warmer than normal, that's when we tend to have El Ninos, which potentially could happen this year, Royal.
Yeah, and so our question, Nat, we'll go to you first of all, but what do El Ninos, if we get there, we know that we believe that we're, you guys can explain the forecast better than us, so maybe I'll just let you say, what's the forecast, Nat? What direction are we headed right now?
Yeah, so we are having an increasing confidence that El Nino will develop, likely by summer and especially into the fall. So El Nino tends to peak in the late fall, early winter. And so its onset tends to occur perhaps by summer. And so we're in line for, a likelihood of El Nino developing by summer, and that likelihood increases even more by late fall.
Now, are you folks, the forecasters, it seemed that the La Nina that had been forecast that we had through the end of last year, and probably, I haven't checked the chart today, but we're probably still just in or just moving out of El Nino into ENSO neutral. There was a little bit of, and I know El Ninos and La Ninas aren't guaranteed weather, but it seemed like this last La Nina surprised a lot of us in maybe just the way it kind of held its pattern for so long.
Yeah. Yes, yeah, it did stick around for a while. La Ninas tend to repeat a couple of years in a row, and this one has continued for a couple of years now, but it does look like it's winding up.
Okay.
And all right, obviously one of the reasons we're doing the show today is there's a term being thrown around: strong El Nino, super Nino, things like that.
La Bamba Nino.
Stuff like that. So first of all, Nat, is super Nino a real term, or what do people mean when they say things like that?
As far as I'm aware, that's just something that's been made up in the media, social media, etc. There's no official super El Nino, but it, obviously it refers to an El Nino of a very strong magnitude, and sometimes it gets thrown around for when the sea surface temperature anomalies in the east central tropical Pacific go above 2 degrees Celsius. So there have been a few events of that strength over the past century, but obviously an El Nino of that strength is generally rare.
So with the strength that it's being forecast, and if I peeked over on Pete's computer, I would have seen the latest numbers up over there. Thanks, Pete. What is that typically for a wide picture of the entire U.S., and then for us here out in Arizona, the western U.S.? Generally speaking, what kind of weather does that set us up for? And Nat, you can do that.
Okay, so first I'll note that in terms of the intensity of the forecast, that there's still a lot of uncertainty. So our forecasts made in March and April are still uncertain, but we're confident that El Nino will develop. Just whether it'll be a weak, moderate, strong event, still uncertain. But if we do get an El Nino, we do tend to get a strengthening and of this subtropical jet and a more eastward extent that tends to lead to wetter and cooler conditions over the southern tier of the U.S., including Arizona. And the mountains tend to get more snowfall, so that could be good news for those who have been unusually dry and warm this past winter. It tends to be warmer of the northern tier of the U.S. and Canada, and the greatest impacts do tend to occur in the winter season.
And picking up on that, Emily, about the greatest effects in the winter. So let's, while I ask you this question, we can put up our touch screen again. And this basically shows exactly what Nat was talking about. This is a look at typical El Nino winters. And as Nat was just mentioning, you get the warmer, sometimes drier pattern north, the wetter, cooler pattern south. Can you explain how, yes, this is just a tendency. It doesn't always work out like this, right?
Yeah, that's right. And one way to look at it is it increases the chances of this happening. Say, take for example the wetter, cooler southwest, but it's not a sure bet. So maybe if half the time it's wetter and half the time it's drier, in the case of El Nino, that tips the scales a little bit. So we've got a 65% chance of wetter or drier.
Emily, I wanted to ask you this question because the one sort of curveball that I read about researchers having to deal with is the whole sea is warming up, generally speaking. So does that start making some of these forecasts even more difficult because you've got to try to factor in this warmer sea and what a warmer sea will do as compared to sea ocean temperatures that maybe we had a couple of decades ago?
Yes, and in fact, we've recently switched to using a way of measuring El Nino that takes into account those warmer oceans. So the tropical oceans in general have been warming up, and that affects how El Nino behaves. But as of just a month or two ago, we switched to officially using this measurement that is just as good in terms of how well we can predict it and has a more realistic representation of the impacts we can expect over North America.
So you've already made those adjustments, and we've got good readings out. But is there anything? Does it show? I mean, are we going to see these swings as we have in so many other cases? And either of you can answer this, where we're going to have quicker swings from El Nino to La Nina. You know, we've been hearing about less rain, but potential for more violent storms and those sorts of things. Do you think we're going to see that play out with the El Nino, La Nina going back and forth? It's going to happen faster?
What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. So one thing I'll note, it's challenging to study changes in ENSO because it has so much inherent natural variability on timescales over many decades. So you might have, a few decades with active El Nino and La Nina, and then a few decades where it's quiet, just due to random variability. However, we have seen evidence that there have been more these extreme swings between El Nino and La Nina over the last half century or so. And there is some evidence from our climate models that this is projected to continue to increase in response to increasing greenhouse gases. So you're right. We have been seeing more of these swings from La Nina to El Nino. And even if you look at the last 5 years, it's, we've hardly had any seasons that are in ENSO neutral. We've really been transitioning from one state to the other rather quickly. And it's been mostly La Nina the last 5 years. So yeah, this is a really interesting question, and it's something that the science community is still trying to fully understand.
Well, Nat and Emily, there has been a development since you were on the show a few months ago. We actually get to have commercials now. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a short break for a couple minutes and then be right back with you to talk more about El Nino. All right, welcome back to Sonoran Sky Live. We've been talking about El Nino and the various effects on our weather, and we know that it has a decently strong correlation for the winter, not so much in the summer. Right. So, Emily, I'm going to start with you. I think it was you who may have wrote a blog post about potential correlations with El Nino and things like our summer monsoon. And it looks like, in summary, there's a correlation, but it's fairly weak, right? Sometimes it doesn't tell us all that much.
Yeah, there is a tendency to a drier monsoon during El Nino, but it's not a very strong relationship. Out of about, just looking at a quick analysis I did a few years ago, out of about 16 El Nino summers, maybe 9 were drier monsoons. So it's not a very robust statistical relationship there.
Right. So in a way, that's kind of like saying, well, anything could still happen. So I'm going to put this up, and I know viewers might think we're like contradicting ourselves, but this is the Climate Prediction Center. This is up on our touchscreen. The monsoon forecast, they're leaning above normal, but I mean, this simply sort of proves what we were saying, that El Nino, those tendencies are weak. It doesn't determine everything. In fact, we had the Weather Service on a few weeks ago, and there's another thing that happens around here apparently, where if we get hot, dry soils this time of year, that can sometimes lead to more than average precipitation. So this kind of shows that El Nino, especially during the summertime, not a huge factor, and you have to look at other things, right?
That's absolutely correct. So, the direct influence of El Nino on the summer over the U.S. is pretty modest, but the summertime climate is more, and generally more, influenced by the soil moisture anomalies and how that impacts both the temperature and precipitation. So I'm not familiar with the details that went into this particular outlook, but I would agree that summertime is quite a bit distinct from winter in this role of soil moisture anomalies.
Yeah, and one of the things we're also looking at with this El Nino is we're talking about this internally because this kind of approach has in the past set us up for what we call a pre-monsoon or an early monsoon, where we get some storms in the valley in late June, which is pretty unusual. Late June, we really usually don't get stuff till July. But then it goes, we call it a false start. Then it goes away for 6 weeks or 8 weeks, and we have to wait till later in the monsoon. So this sort of, just so you guys know, this sort of scenario for us is painting a little bit of a false start for the monsoon, and our hopes will rise that we'll have rain all over the state. And well, you know how that goes. Now, here, I do want to ask this question about El Nino that I kind of skipped over, and it's for the whole planet. True or not, and we'll start with Emily on this. True or not, the forecasters, though, for the whole planet are saying El Nino will lead to record high temperatures. Might make it this year, but for sure into next year. Is that correct?
That's correct in the sense that forecasters are talking about the entire global average temperature.
Okay.
There's a pretty strong relationship between that value. So you average the temperature over the entire planet. Pretty strong relationship between that and El Nino. So the last El Nino event we had, 2023, 24, both of those years were near the top. I think 2024 was the warmest year on record.
Wow.
And, you know, when we talk about the potential strength of this El Nino, I wanted to kind of visually show this, and Nat, this question could go to you. So I'm putting up, I think, some of the IRI models. I think this is somewhat recently updated. And it's basically a big spread of plots that are forecasting how strong the El Nino could potentially be. Basically, the higher up the lines go, the stronger the forecast is. But I mean, we've got lines that go really high, indicating a strong El Nino, but we also have lines that indicate a weak El Nino, or maybe even close to no El Nino at all, right? So it's a spread of models that you have to look at, right?
That's right. And this particular plume of models includes both our computer climate models that make our seasonal forecasts, as well as statistical models. So there's a wide variety of models. And really one of the key points here is that forecasts for ENSO, for El Nino or La Nina, made in spring, tend to be highly uncertain in terms of the strength of the event. And this is really captured here. So even though I'd say we're unusually confident that we're going to have an El Nino, given that it is only spring, there's still a lot of uncertainty about how strong this event will be.
Now, is the red dark line on there, I see it says dynamic average. What is that the average of all El Ninos, or is that the average of these runs?
It's the average of all the models that are based on computer model simulations that simulate the physics of El Nino and La Nina, which is different from the statistical models, which are based on historical statistical relationships in producing the models. And
conversely, what's the green line on there? That I don't see on the chart, but is that sort of is that an average or a mean?
Yes, that's going to be the average of these models that are based on historical relationships between factors that influence El Nino and La Nina, and using that to make the predictions. So it's not based on the physics and a climate model. It's based on historical relationships.
Oh, okay.
So, Royal, I went to grad school with Nat.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Study meteorology.
Oh, cool.
And when we got stuck on a problem set,
yeah,
we would all make sure that Nat was invited to the homework group.
Oh, there you go.
You can tell that this guy really could help us out.
But now we have the opportunity to say, Nat, how good of a student was he? I'll bet pretty good, right?
Pete did well. I mean, he did
it was sort of underselling.
That you might expect based on how he acted sometimes, but.
I will say, Nat, you kind of undersold that. Hey, that Pete's a great guy. Well, yeah, he held his own. Okay.
Listen, I would say during the homework sessions, I was like the moral support. I would sing, kind of jump around the room, get people, kind of fired up.
It was definitely, we definitely needed the comic relief at times, so he was very bad.
Right.
Yeah, well, he knows you very well, doesn't he?
Yes, everybody needs that, right?
I need it, that's for sure. Hey, should we take another break and finish up with these guys and kind of talk about this impact going into the summer and sort of focus in on the monsoon for us? Want to do that?
And even maybe touch on the winter, because it could be good news for the winter.
Because winter actually might have some more better news.
Yes.
More better? We'll be back in just a couple minutes.
We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to Sonoran Sky Live. I'm here with meteorologist Royal Norman, and we've been talking about El Nino. Emily, I want to talk about potentially some good news with this possible El Nino coming. Emily, I actually have a graphic I'm going to put up here on the screen. Now, you may recognize this. This is the opposite of what our La Nina graphic looked like. This is the past 4 El Ninos for Flagstaff snowfall. And this is a perfect example of what we've been talking about. There's a little bit of a stronger correlation with El Nino in the wintertime. It tends to mean cooler, wetter patterns for places like Arizona. And you can see of the past 4 El Ninos here in Flagstaff, 1 was about normal for winter snowfall, 2 were above normal, and 1 below normal. And Emily, that just kind of paints exactly how these tendencies should be working, right?
Yep, that really sums it up quite nicely. And I assume you have a snowfall trend with the warming trend.
Oh, yes. Snowfall trended down this year a lot.
Yes.
Yeah, that's negative. So I might expect that these we're looking sort of at 3 out of 4 El Ninos with an average to stronger amount of snow. So yeah, that's a great illustration of the chances of more snow.
And why is it that El Nino, at least for Arizona or the Southwest, is more, or maybe it's everywhere in the U.S., is it always more dynamic in the winter compared to the summer, just about anywhere you look?
Yeah, that's right. It is always more dynamic in the winter for primarily 2 reasons. The first is that, as Nat said, El Nino and La Nina tend to peak in the late fall, early winter time. And also the planet, if you think about it, the difference between the equator and the North Pole has a very strong change in temperatures, and when you have a strong during the winter, and when you have a strong change in temperature, then you have just a lot more variability in your weather.
And Nat, you know, it's interesting when we look at all of these statistics and models. I know that you actually release the official ENSO forecast once a month on the 2nd Thursday of each month. Is that generally when the official forecast comes out?
Right. Yes.
See, I know my schedule.
Well, yeah, he's got the schedule down. Yeah. I only know about when the drought schedule comes out, so there you go.
Right, right. And do you and Emily compare notes when you're forecasting El Nino or La Nina? Do you say, all right, I have this for Pacific Ocean temperature,
right,
but maybe the other model has this, and you kind of come to a consensus?
We have. Oh, sorry, Nat. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
We've got, I think, currently 11 people on our ENSO forecast team, and we have a discussion, but we all do make our own forecasts. So we have a discussion ahead of time to point out different things that we might all be seeing, but then we each make our own independent forecasts, and they are combined together into the official forecast.
So it's not like, you know, we hear about court proceedings and decisions where there's a decision made, but each justice or judge, depending on the court, writes their own opinion. You guys write your own opinion, but you don't separate them out, do you? You bring them into one complete report?
Yeah, that's the final outcome, right? So each individual makes a forecast, and then they're consolidated, and they become the final outlook. So and every time I make a forecast, I'm always curious to see if, you know, how much others agree or disagree. Usually there's pretty good, you know, pretty good consensus, and then, you know, so the consolidation of the forecast is, I don't think too onerous, or there's not too much of a debate there.
I think we should ask them very quickly what they think we should put in the title of this live and podcast to be. We're not going to put Bomb El Nino, but what do you guys will think would be a good hooker for this story? The El Nino that's coming, cross your fingers?
Oh, boy.
I'll put them on the spot.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, I guess
that sounds more at least more rooted in in our current state of knowledge.
Well, let's do that.
Yeah.
What's rooted in your knowledge?
They're like, hey, that's our job.
Right.
That's why they do what they do.
Right.
They don't have to come
They
up
don't, they don't have to hype it. You're absolutely right about that. Sorry to put you on the spot there, but I'll bet you about an hour from now, you'll both think of one and you'll go, ah, that was a good one. I should use that.
Probably.
Yeah, so there you go. I want to thank them for coming on, huh? They're great.
Yes. Nat and Emily, thanks so much for being on not only once, but a second time on Sonoran Sky Live. It was great to see you.
A lot of fun. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks for joining us. And before we get out of here, Pete, I just want to tell you, I was home yesterday, but I tuned in your podcast. I happened to get it over Roku,
Okay.
but basically go to AZ Family Plus. There's a lot of people that carry it. That's where you can find the live that we're doing right now. We also turn these over to podcast on YouTube and all the other podcast channels. You can see us everywhere.
That's right. Make sure you pay attention.
You got it. No escape.
See you later.